I'm here at Holy Stone in Northumberland as the sun is setting on a beautiful autumn day. I'm very mindful that today is the presidential election in the United States. It reminded me of another election at another time, and the election had not gone the way that I thought it should have done, that I wanted it to. And when I woke up and found that out, I was strongly tempted not to get out of bed, actually, at all. I just thought, no. An honest response to this is to just not engage with the world. But the bells were ringing and it was time for morning prayer, and I managed to get myself out of bed and get into the room where others were saying prayers. And I sat there and I felt God speak perhaps a little bit more firmly than usual. Almost like, here is the line. Here's the line, your emotional line. I understand that you're upset, but do not cross this line. And for me, the line was around despair. That fine to be angry, anxious, to be confused, all of these things. But there was a kind of, growing up in the mountains, like a lot of mountain roads had guard railings on it, so you didn't just fall off the side of the road if you took a turn too fast. And it was almost like God put in the guard railing for me and just said, don't cross this line or you're going to fall off a very steep cliff. And, there was only one tiny step between where I was on the edge of things and kind of falling off. But that one tiny step was important, and I was getting near to the place of real danger emotionally. And I heeded that, and I took a step back, and I kept getting out of bed in the days that followed as best as I could anyway. And it reminded me of how often our big things can happen in just tiny steps. A film version of this, which really impacted me, and maybe not you if you didn't see it, and that's okay. But at the end of the Game of Thrones, Daenerys is on her dragon. She's known as the mother of dragons, and she's been, we've just had kind of this epic long battle, and she's finally won. And her faithful hand, kind of is looking up at her. She's riding her dragon, saying, that's it, we've won, it's enough. Turn around now. And you see in her eyes, and the actress I heard her talk about it, where there's a moment where you could say, okay, that's enough, or you can just let go and go for it. And in this story, the character goes for total annihilation. It's not enough that she's won the battle. She wants world domination, basically, and she's got some dragons to help her do that. But the actress talked about knowing that moment and kind of digging deep inside of herself, although presumably none of us have been exactly in that same position on top of a dragon. But there was the emotional thing, like, gosh, here's this hairpin turn. In which way am I going to go? So I think there's so much happening right now, and I'm sure I know people that no matter how this election goes, for example, tomorrow, or whenever it gets announced, they're going to be on that cliff edge. And just to say that wherever you are, please be careful. Just pass on that thing that I heard that says, don't fall into despair if you can help it. We all have different internal makeups, and so some of us, those struggles are different than for others. But if you feel yourself thinking the only honest response is flat out despair, see if you can't back away from the edge a little bit. It also reminds me, speaking of fantastical things, in Narnia, in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, when Aslan is put to death, he's put to death because of the deep magic. And there's inevitable laws of things. And election results feel like deep reality. You know, you can't say, oh, this won't have any impact, or oh, it doesn't matter, or this won't mean that certain train of events might now happen. There is a deep reality to it. But I think part of that word that I heard sitting in morning prayer that day was saying, remember the deeper reality. They're as powerful as world leaders are, as influential as nations are. There is a deeper truth, a deeper reality, a deeper power at work. And we have access to that. We are connected to that. And we can engage with the part of ourselves that connects us there and to each other. So funnily enough as well, for me, part of the deeper magic as a follower of Jesus is my baptism, which happened when I was 2.5 years old. I was born in Houston, Texas, but my mother said that she knew they were leaving Texas and she wanted to wait to baptize me to wherever they went to next, to find a home church so where I was baptized was a place that I grew up in. And that happened. So in Kingsport, Tennessee, I was baptized at Waverly Road Presbyterian Church by a man named Morris Warren. And Morris was part of my faith development as a little person, but this church was a deep part of my faith development throughout my life and even now. So I don't remember my baptism, but I wasn't just an infant, and I did have faith at a young age. Also, one of my own funny baptism things is that when I was at college at university, I was going on an overnight camping trip with some friends. I had some health issues, undiagnosed, and I was nervous about this. And one of my big shame things throughout life is not wanting to be the weakest link on an outdoor adventure. And we got halfway up this mountain, and I had an abdominal attack with what now has a diagnosis. But the result was we had to stop everything, and I just lied down on the side of the path and couldn't move. I was in so much pain. And my two friends that I were with, they were like, oh my goodness. They didn't really say it, but almost like, why did we take her with us? But I was really bad, and there was nothing to be done. We were halfway up this hill. I was too poor to go down. It wasn't a right place to set up camp. So they just had to wait while I stayed in this pain. And I don't know if I was like unconscious, but in a deep sleep. Anyway, something finally shifted just a little bit. And I remember lying flat on my back on the ground and being out of it and kind of coming to. And this man's face was over me going, are you okay? Are you okay? And I looked up at this face and I thought, it's Morris Warren. Now, he'd been dead like 15 years at this point or something. But I was like, it's Morris Warren, the man who baptized me. I'm going to be okay. God has me. And it was such a funny thing. Like, it was a little lifeline for me in this side of the mountain ill. And it was from that point I started to get better. And I think that couple my friends helped to get me back down the mountain. And eventually it passed. But there was this sign of hope, this lifeline in this dark place. And I know other people for whom their baptism has been like a lifeline for them. One of my mentors, for example, he needed to get out of his home of his family of origin, and for a variety of reasons, he had trouble escaping that. And when the day of kind of rescue finally came, it was on the date of the anniversary of his baptism. And he said it just never felt like a coincidence to him that there was this kind of lifeline. So as a ordained person. I have baptized lots of people of various ages, and sometimes it feels incredibly meaningful, like when I helped baptize Helen, who works at Nether Springs and at Walkworth in the Coquette River this time last year. It was just a phenomenal, meaningful experience for us all. And other times where it's felt much less meaningful and I didn't know how much meaning it was for the people involved with it. But I always think none of us understands the full meaning of this, because this is in the realm of deeper magic. And also it's in the realm of spiritual realities and of deep symbols. So when you have a baptism, there's water, there's a kind of cleansing, there's the waters that you think that each of our mothers had to break before we came into this world. There is the sign of the cross made on our foreheads, for those of us who've been baptized, which marks us. I feel like it's a kind of spiritual tattoo on my face, that somehow the cross is on me, in me, marks me, it claims me in a way that for me I find very powerful and comforting. Then there is the oil that seals in the work of the Holy Spirit. So the oil of healing, the oil of joy, and this oil that whatever's happened, it kind of like when you get baptized, it gets sealed in. And then finally at the end you get a candle as a sign of light that can pierce the darkness. So all of these things are happening depending on how the baptisms go, but all these things are at work. And I think when I get in the place of despair, remembering another time, as I said, of a political upheaval that I found very difficult, but also, pick probably any week of the year 2020, and something would have warranted me, at various times for me, as probably for you, up in the middle of the night in the darkness and thinking, how are we going to survive this? What's happening? And those are the times, I think, that we have to find what our lifelines are. What are the things that keep us from really just falling off the edge? So I've mentioned one of mine, baptism. And I'll just say, while we're on that theme, this is an ancient place where Paulinus baptized reportedly thousands of Northumbrians before Aidan came. So it was an early mission to this part of the world. And it's just remarkable to imagine. And it's also kind of in a sacred grove of trees. So it was probably a holy place before Paulinus got here. And I wanted to be here today as I talk about one of my own lifelines. But this is probably a time for you, for all of us, to think, maybe you're not baptized, maybe baptism isn't significant for you, but there's something else that you know to be true, something else that is like you're on the edge of a cliff, and what is the harness? What's the rope that goes with the harness that keeps you from really falling down? If you do fall down, most of us will be able to get back up. It could just be costly and take some time to do so. But what is that? What is that rope, and how do you hold on to it right now? The other thing I wanted to mention is that we have a role to play with each other in this. Give me just a second. So this is my mountaineering harness, a gift from Sarah Hay, and you'd put it around your waist, and it has these loops that you can hook on, carabiners to it, where the lines would go. And I feel like one of my roles in life is to have this harness on and to have both feet on the ground, kind of in a wide stance, because for some people that I love, there's times when they can hook in, and it's part of the safety for them not falling. And I couldn't do it when I had COVID, and there's times I can't do it, but for various, at times and for various people, I feel like this, God says, and it's my pleasure and my joy for some people to be hooked in at certain times. Also, there have been people, and you know who you are, who have me hooked into their harness. And times when I've been on the edge and have been falling, that part of what kept me from total destruction is because there's somebody on firm ground that has me roped into them around their waist. And I'm so grateful for those people and for that sense of not having to be at it alone when it's bad, because it's been bad for all of us, hasn't it, at some time or another? And I think it's been bad for all of us this year in some way or another. So it's kind of another reason that I think I try not to fall off the edge of the cliff, is because one of the gifts when you've been near there is that you can help be there for others at that time. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians chapter 1 about that you get to comfort people, comfort with strength, with fortitude, people with the same comfort that you have received. And it's part of the thing that redeems pain for me and redeems those dark nights. We're doing the Coleman readings in the mornings in November from Celtic Daily Prayer Book 2, and I was struck even this morning, November the 3rd, the daily reading says, "The psalmist worships in cries of protest and lament, as well as through hymns of praise and celebration. If we only offer God our edited selves in prayer and worship, how real is our relationship?" I'm drawn back again to the Psalms right now, and how you have every emotion in there. And the goal isn't to provide, as it says, our edited selves, that we only give to God the happy emotions, but the full spectrum. And on the cross, amazingly, Jesus, of all the things that he might say, he prays Psalm 22, verse 1, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" Now, some people might hear that as a cry of non-faith, but actually it's always struck me that he chooses, one, to pray scripture at that time, but also that he is naming God and claiming God. My God, why is this happening? So it's keeping that honesty, it's keeping that connection, and it's also in the Hebraic tradition that when you pray the first line of a psalm, it's almost you're claiming the whole thing. And if you go and read all of Psalm 22, it gets bad to worse, and then something shifts towards the end of it again. But if you think about the Psalms, that's often the way. You have orientation, disorientation, reorientation, things changing, and all the different range of human emotions are there. So I guess on this day when in the UK we're about to go back into lockdown, in the United States there's big things happening politically around the world, there's still the pandemic raging and things happening ecologically and beyond. It's just a good reminder to say, bring it all, bring it all, but also but heed the warnings. Bring it all, but heed the warnings when they come, because it would be good to somehow, as best as we can, make it all through this together. In Hebrews chapter 6, there's an amazing image that comes which talks about an anchor that is there for us behind the veil through Jesus, our great high priest. The anchor behind the veil. This reminds me of the deep magic and the deeper magic. That somehow it's like that lifeline. There's something that's holding us, maybe unseen, maybe mysterious. For me, I think certainly given to us by Jesus. But there's an anchor behind the veil that means that we do not just completely sink or completely fall. It holds us when perhaps everything else in the world is shaking or burning or changing. The anchor behind the veil. Another thing for me that helps is to remember that people have been in bad ways, but I've been in a bad way before. So if I end up in a bad way tomorrow, it won't be new, even though it'll be a new day. And people have been in bad ways throughout history. And so remembering and learning about how other people have responded to things helps me. Even lots of people have been going back to look at the plague and the Black Death or the Spanish influenza and feeling connected to ancestors and people throughout time who faced pandemics like this before. What did they do? How must they have felt? How did it change things afterwards? How long did it go on for? But to remember. And for me, I think because I've said that baptism is one of my lifelines, another reason I've come here today, not only to remember our Celtic inheritance and the things that get planted in land and in people that make a difference beyond what we might imagine, is for me on this day to remember my own baptism, to remember to whom I belong, to remember that I am loved, to remember that I have a calling and a purpose in this world, that though I'm small and insignificant, I'm also needed here somehow, that the party isn't complete without me. I would say all these things to you as well. But for myself right now, and perhaps you as well if you want to join me, I'll take my Camino shell and remember my baptism. So God, thank you for my baptism, for those that have loved me through my life, and for your love which started, well, before I was even, your love for me which started before I was even born. Thank you for connecting me to other people, to be part of a big family. Thank you for this earth and for the beauty of this place and all of those who have gone before me here. So today, in spite of everything that is happening, I remember my baptism and am joyful. Amen.